All right, we are good to go though. So 5, 4, 3, 2.
Okay. It's episode nobody knows
Nobody knows.
Don't care.
of Three Bros Podcast, where we shout at each other and we enjoy it. Okay. So I reread this article again today. And for full context, I think we discussed it a little bit last week, which I will be posting that episode as well. No worries. But Caleb posted Big Data meets Big Brother as China moves to raid its citizens. The Chinese government plans to launch its social credit system in 2020. The aim to judge the trustworthiness or otherwise of its 1.3 billion residents. Now, before Caleb posted this, this is a genuine question I'm asking Chad. You heard of this before, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you've read of it before. Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's been plenty of articles. And reading through this, it's a Wired article, .co.uk, which means I feel like it's British, but that's fine. When you read the article, it clearly states and shows that like you can voluntarily be a part of this social credit system that they're trying to implement since 2014. So it's definitely been around enough for people who have been keeping a close eye or keeping their finger on the pulse. Articles just of like things that happen in the world and things that genuinely scare us, which this should. So,
What I find interesting about this
Go ahead.
is you specifically say that this is something that scares us. And so I was pulling a few things, and I was listening to Republica 1 hour talk about it. What's interesting is that when they polled Chinese citizens, they had like an 80% approval rating for participating in a social credit system. Now, my question would be is this more of a societal thing? Like, are Chinese people, like in their country, in their traditions, more susceptible to accept this social credit system just based on like tradition? Like, they have a longer standing history of honor and tradition and family, more so than Americans. Like, Americans at this point, especially now, are just extremely kind of paranoid and untrustworthy of government. Is this just more of a social concept where we just don't understand where Chinese people are coming from?
I think that's definitely a variable. I think that when you talk about a society that strives for freedom in most, if not all of what it does, compared to a communist society, you will get certain mindsets, right? I think that's a variable. I think it's a factor. But I'm glad you brought this up, because if I may read a quote from the article, I think this, and especially because it came from the article and this came from first person interviews in Beijing about the social credit system. Okay.
Who's doing the interviews?
Quote from the article, BBC.
Gotcha.
Quote from the article. Yeah, they referenced BBC did it.
Okay.
I didn't click on the link, but they referenced it. I don't think anybody would misreference BBC, but anyways. Quote from the article. If their score reaches 600, they can take out a just spend loan of up to 5,000 won, around 565 euro, to use to shop online, as long as it's on Alibaba's site. Reach 650 points. These points are like the points in the credit system, obviously.
Yeah.
Reach 650 points. They may rent a car without leaving a deposit. They are also entitled to faster check-in at hotels and use of the VIP check-in at Beijing Capital International Airport. Those with more than 666 points, mark of the Satan, can get a cash loan of up to 50,000 won, 5,700 euro, from Ant Financial Services. Get above 700 and they can apply for Singapore travel without supporting documents such as an employee letter, which is weird and scary that you need to get an employee letter, but whatever. And at 750, they get fast-tracked application to a coveted pan-European Schengen visa. I think the best way, and this is a quote from the article itself, I think the best way to understand the system is as a sort of bastard love child of a loyalty scheme. So where I agree with Caleb on what he just said, they are given huge economic incentives for participating and being a good participant. And I think that's the biggest driver right now, especially when the system is voluntary. And I also think on top of that, Caleb, when you talk about approval ratings, you live in a regime that is maybe not, we all agree, maybe isn't 100% communist anymore, but is very repressive and can be very repressive. What are you going to do? Speak out against them? Go ahead.
So the approval rating comes from a third-party group in Germany who are doing the interviews. So it's not through the regime itself. Like they're actually going on social media platforms, and maybe that's where the bias like tick comes into play, is that you're on a social media platform talking about it.
Right.
But it's not necessarily done through the government. The other thing I also want to point out is there, for me at least, and I don't know if anyone's been able to read about it or understand it a little bit more, is that there seems to be several different credit systems going on at the same time right now. They have yet to be actually
Right.
unified. Now,
They're
of these
competing
credit
companies.
systems, that the one that you described might be a part of a credit system from a private institution that may be null and void come next year.
Yes.
So right now we don't know entirely for sure if that's exactly how they're going to run said operation, because it seems like the public version of this, or the actual government run version, there is no actual score per se, whereas the private one, there's a defined algorithmic score based on all sorts of variables, and you get this number.
Mhm.
So
and the
to
artic-
me, what's interesting about that is that a lot of the argument that people have right now is like it's like a way for government regime to be oppressive towards, right, political dissent or you name it. Whereas to
Yeah.
me right now, the whole like Orwellian fear is actually coming from the quote, and I use this term loosely, obviously, but the private institutions within China. They're the ones that are like, hey, here's a score, here's what we'll rate you on, here's X, Y, and Z. And I find that interesting that there's a slightly different dichotomy between the actual government doing it and the private sector doing it.
I think at face value, I would agree with you. But in the article, it states, and it doesn't, the article doesn't say that China will do this, okay? But it connects dots as far as modern technology and data collection goes. And this is how it connects dots. It says, what China is doing right now, and what we know that they're doing right now, is they're pitting 8 companies against each other that are already doing preliminary collection, like Caleb said. Like private companies are already on behalf of the Chinese government doing preliminary collections, doing preliminary testing to kind of like, from what I read in the article, and correct me if I'm wrong, it felt like kind of how defense contractors duke it out here to get a contract. These private companies are trying to perfect a system to win the contract, right? For when it goes into employment in 2020. Here's the problem. Caleb, do you honestly think that the Chinese government isn't just going to take all the data all the 8 of these companies collected and input it in? Because if you think they're not going to, I think that's very wrong. I think that
and that's a
it
fair
has already
point.
started, and I think that they're going to take everything they've collected and bash it in. It's
So,
like free fucking collecting. Go ahead.
No, I hear you, and to me, there's not a disagreement to that at all.
Mm-hmm.
What I find interesting specifically is our specific American perspective to that, right? How far do you think the United States is to implementing a similar system?
How far away are we?
There's no way.
Yeah, like if we decided,
no way,
that's what I'm saying. If we decided that we would implement this system, how quick do you think we could implement a system like this in America?
So it's not about if we would, it's how fast it could happen?
Correct.
Sure.
Yes. How fast do you think it could happen if we decided as a country this is what we want to do? Oh, boy.
You might have to train a whole new generation to be okay with it. So a while?
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about the actual infrastructure of monitoring people.
Oh, it wouldn't be hard, I don't think.
I feel like, quite frankly, it'd be the flip of a switch, just about.
Yeah,
Short of actually developing an algorithm that spits out a number, we're already there. And what I find interesting is that I feel like the difference, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, the difference between the Chinese government doing it right now and what I feel, and I have no real evidence other than Snowden to really back this up, is that in China, it's a publicly displayed score against or for you as an individual, whereas here in America it's kind of a bit more secret, right? We do have credit scores, we do have systems and checks and balances in place that allow you more privilege than other things. They're just not based on a social understanding of what the score is. So, for example, if you give more to charity in the Chinese system, and this is kind of a way that you can rig the system in China, but still, if you give to charity in China, you can get a better score. That's
Right.
something that like we don't do here to encourage, charitable
benefits,
donations.
but I hear you.
Yeah, you can claim them.
And I get that, but I'm talking. No, you're right. But what I'm talking about specifically is like benefiting as like from a societal perspective, like being a good person is kind of.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is false, but that's kind of the goal in some ways, right? We don't do
Correct.
that here. We don't encourage that level of social engagement at all.
So that's what of the interviews
That's
that
true.
I've seen. That's what a lot of Chinese people will reference is that it encourages better social behavior, right? And
Yeah.
when you talk about that cultural difference between, like, say, Chinese society and American society, they're more of a collectivist. There's more of a collectivist attitude there, I would say.
Yeah, I think a lot of Asian countries are that way.
A bit, yeah, like Japan. They're more focused on the collective, which is, that's just a cultural difference. But I think that's why a social credit like this, a social credit system where the Chinese government is just so open about it, works there because that's how they perceive these things, right? Like it's for the better of the collective. Whereas immediately we're just like knee jerk, fuck that. That sounds horrible.
Right.
I'm
So
with
my
you.
question though is like
Yeah, sure,
long term though. Like we always
No,
talk
it's
about the
not.
No,
future.
it's not gonna happen.
Hold on.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
always talk about the future on this pod quite a bit. We talk about where we're going to go in the future, and to say 1,000 generations from now, could you see a society
Oh, that's
in which
way too far.
Yeah, I could.
okay,
for sure.
100 generations from now? I don't. I'm just merely putting something out there. We can talk about it in a second. Let me finish my thought. Is however long in the distant future you want to just establish, Chad, where we do have machines that provide the solutions to our problems, and we just use this collectivist mentality to achieve said common goals. Do you think that is in any way, shape, or form the potential next step in humans in our social kind of hierarchy and in our evolution? Right, we came from where kings would rule. Now we do have a representative government to in some way rule. Like, do you think the future is just okay, the machines are, our computers and our analytics, they're all going to provide what we need to do, and since that spits out XYZ if I do it for now, right, one of our biggest issues is global warming, right? So every scientist on the planet, just about, except for ones that are getting paid a healthy amount of money from the Koch brothers, say that we are warming the planet, right? And there are potential solutions that we could put in place, but we can't because of a gajillion factors and variables.
Sure.
If we had this same problem 100 generations in the future, we would go to the machines and we would go to our computers and we would look at the analytics and the science and we'd say, okay, here's what we need to do. And then we turn around, we go back to everybody and say, okay, here's what we need to do. We can implement the system because we have more of a collectivist society and process towards us as humans. Like, do you think in any way, shape, or form that could be the future of human society?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely potential there. 100 generations is a long time, though.
I hope you're right.
I know. I threw a number out there. Ignore how long into the future.
Yeah,
sure.
No, I did. Look, I'll say
but is this the
I
potential next step? I guess that's where I'm getting.
I hope so, but then that posits the idea that a bunch of human beings will be ready to accept only basic necessities and maybe a little bit more for the good of the whole, which we can't do right now. There are no question a lot of selfish people that still live amongst us that would take until they can't take no more.
You're absolutely correct.
Right. As long as you have people like that who are never satisfied, it gets tough. It gets tough.
1,000 years ago, we had kings and queens. You know what I mean? Like, maybe 1,000 years into the future. And I wonder if this is the birthing steps of seeing that new society start to develop. And this is where we are right now. Is we see it from a perspective of being Americans and being from a capitalist society and having a level of freedom afforded to us that really hasn't been afforded to the average human in human history.
Mm-mm.
And we see now that what we have because of that level of freedom. I mean, that level of competition without very many checks and balances, that level of, again, human expression that has gotten us to the point where some would argue, although we've done a ton of great things, we're also quickly, destroying our planet.
Mm-hmm.
Is
This is
this the
going,
lesson that we have to learn in order to go towards a better, more, not entirely collectivist, but more collectivist thought process in society going forward in the future?
This takes us down a fascinating path discussion, which I'm more than welcome to go down to. Have we gotten better in the past 1,000 years because necessarily evolution, or because we've just been better at adapting to our environment? I would say the latter. I don't think evolution can happen in 1,000 years so quickly that all of a sudden we're just better as like a people working together. I don't know that's how evolution works, and I'm pretty sure that's not how evolution works. So I don't think that in 100 generations, I think I know, and this is just my opinion. I can have some well-known scientists slap me down and I will accept it, but I think I know that in 100 years humans won't get any better evolving as far as like their genetic makeup to just be a better collective. I just think that hopefully we can use the tools that we've invented in our environment to get us there. But then that still means that there's going to be shitty people in society. There always will be. And I think
Until
we might
we
not
start
have
using
kings.
CRISPR.
We might not. Yeah, right. That's true. Difficult discussion. We might not have kings and queens anymore. And we do a lot better because of how connected we are and because of how technologically advanced we are, in my opinion. That's why we do a lot better. But we still have people who tend to be autocratic, who would like to be kings, who would like every single person to bow down before them because they think that their penis smells better than anybody else's penis. So
Or
that
vagina.
hasn't left human beings. Or vagina. That's fair.
Thank you.
That hasn't. You're not wrong. You're right. That hasn't left human beings. Okay, it hasn't.
No,
So,
I hear you.
go
I
ahead.
hear you. But even in, so what I'm describing, and as I like think about it more, in some ways it's like a computer communism in some way, right? Like where it's
Mhm.
communism, but we're not answering to an oligarchy or an individual specifically, right? We're going to scientific evidence to help guide our
Right.
path in which we go.
And I'm open to that discussion. Go ahead.
That being said, boy, and I just lost my entire train of thought, and I had something good.
Oh my.
What were you saying, Cyril?
I was saying it takes us down this path of talking about, hey, look, in this last 1,000 years, is it evolution or is it just we've learned to better adapt to our environment? Go ahead.
Right. But so in a communist state right now, are there people that can move higher in the political party, in the communist party, than other people? Like, I think that there's going to be, well, there is. I mean,
Okay.
you look at like North Korea, right? There's a group of people who are like allowed access to the internet. Like Kim Jong doesn't just pick somebody. Like I feel like it. Like you earn that privilege. So I think in these
That's right.
systems that we start building more into the future, there will be a place for those who are more, let's say, alpha, right? More aggressive in their pursuit to reach higher echelons of, you name it, government or capitalism or industry or whatever.
Sure.
But I think that, and I wonder if this again is like those first steps into the foray of, okay, well, if we just like put this out in public, right? And the other thing I also want to put in there is that China isn't only doing this for citizens; it's doing it for its businesses as well.
Yeah. Can I posit a question
Which
that I
I
wrote about
find
this article?
as
Oh, go ahead.
interesting. Well, I find that to be interesting because I think that's something that people in America would actually want in a large way, like a credit system for industry,
Mm-hmm. The first thing that
right?
comes to my mind, especially here in America, is like, have you ever heard of someone say like, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, you shouldn't, be afraid of the police. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
that's not the
yeah.
right answer. That's not the right answer, in my opinion. And let me just ask. Well, okay, go ahead. If you want to respond to that, go ahead.
No. I'm like, that was an audible because I'm like thinking about it now.
Oh, sure, fair enough. Let me
Sorry.
just posit this question specifically to the article too. That was a random thought, but like I was literally rereading in like the third paragraph, and this thing hit me, and I had to write it down. What if you were doing something not accepted by society or the government, but it wasn't bothering anybody else? Okay, all of a sudden you get downranked for that? Like, what if I want to masturbate to like human on animal porn in my room? Okay, like that's not bothering you. And so, like, that's an aggressive example. I probably shouldn't use that, but still, you know what I'm
That's a
saying?
very
Like,
bad
look,
example
it's a
because
really
I
bad
would
example. But
argue that
all right, fine, that's a bad
the
example. But
animal
you know what I'm
has
getting at? Like, come on, yo. Like, what if you're doing things that might be looked down upon from society? So let's say, like, there are some states in our country right now that are making protesting in certain forms illegal. Okay, all of a sudden protesting is illegal, really? And now you're gonna get downgraded as far as your social rank, or like it's just stupid. It's just a very slippery slope, and I don't want to go down it. I
it
don't.
it
I am more
is
confident in person to person policing ourselves as we have than this crap right now. And maybe in
okay.
100
So
generations is fine. Go ahead.
hold on. Can I argue though that if
Mhm.
you were okay with person on person policing ourselves, then how do you explain the mess that we're in?
I agree. I'm specifically talking to this system. I got to clarify.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
talking
Gotcha.
about a
Gotcha.
social credit system. I agree with what you're saying. You're not wrong. You're absolutely not wrong. We're in a huge mess, and that could be a big part of it. I'm just saying, to this social credit system, I just like simple things that, like, someone picking their booger that you see on a day-to-day basis. Like, is that going to negatively affect them? Like, it's just stupid crap like that. Like, I just can't. I have always said, you guys know, after doing 1,000 episodes that nobody listens to, you guys know how I feel on a lot of things. And you guys know that I think a lot of government intervention might be necessary in this day and age and in our society. But I super cringe at like social things. I've always been socially libertarian. I think we all are. I think that you're allowed to do and choose whatever you can do with your life as long as you don't affect anybody else, especially, who gives a shit if the government doesn't like it or the ruling class doesn't like it. This is a very slippery slope, and it might be well intentioned, but I can see this being corrupted out of its mind. I do not trust and accept human beings will not corrupt this. You might have this good for a generation or two, and maybe it runs well, but as we see in history, if you can take something and corrupt it, it will do. Human beings will do so, and that's where I
But
can't.
that's
I
why
can't
my
with this.
argument, though,
Yeah.
right? But my argument is, though, is
Mhm.
that to me, I see this as the building blocks for the computer communist revolution, right? Because only
What
because
does that
this
mean?
specific example, well, this specific
Yeah.
example is incorporating analytics, is incorporating data. Um,
I know,
if
but based on
eventually
whose
you could
opinion?
incorporate, well, I think that's the whole point. Is that once we get to the point, especially when AI becomes
Mhm.
really like stout and really like fleshed out,
Mhm.
couldn't you see a society in which it's okay, we've gone to our AI computers, we've input all the data, da 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 da, here's what we need to do to not fucking kill ourselves.
I
That makes it less likely, not completely unlikely, but less likely for it to be corruptible, number one. Number two, I think it lends credence to the idea of, okay, well, this has no political influence. It has no emotion-based responses. And to some people, it's extremely scary because, you read any of these fiction books, right? The conclusion is, well, humans are pieces of shit. So if we just nuke the planet, get rid of the humans, everything will be fine,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? But you could factor in a lot of those things. You could build a system eventually in which, for the greater good, and I know people don't like that idea because guess what? The greater good, for the most part, does not include you and me.
Correct. That is correct.
That's a scary sentiment, but at the same time,
Yeah.
the fight that you have is the primal survival instinct of human beings to survive no matter what.
I'm with you as far as on an abstract scale, as far as on a like, hey, if we could create a society that has the utmost integrity and is pure meritocracy, I'm with you. I just don't know if human beings can ever create that. I
Yeah,
don't
see, I
know.
don't. So are you defending the social credit system? Like,
I am
I'm not defending the social
boy.
credit
Oh,
system.
Caleb.
Right.
No. I think he was meaning that towards me because I'm kind of, in some ways, making a case for it.
No, but yeah, I know you're
But
not
I'm
defending
saying,
it. You're just go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm just attempting to build the case to where I could see this becoming an integral part of the future, however long from now, based on the rate of technology being developed. I guess that's where I'm trying to get, Chad, if that makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, I'm with you, but not to get too abstract. If AI ever becomes that level, then I feel like society as we know it just won't even like it won't. We won't need to be a collective society anymore if AI becomes a thing. Everybody can be self-sustaining, live in some virtual reality type world type of deal where we don't.
As fuck, but
That's what.
I said that's sad as fuck, but you're right.
So well,
Chad
that's
just
what I'm
went
saying.
Matrix on us.
Well, because AI, if you're talking about the full potential of AI, you're talking about like everybody's taken care of completely, 100%. And
Right.
when that's true, then how much engagement do we really need to have with each other? Not that much. You really don't. We don't have to engage in a society anymore to collect stuff to sustain our life because it's all sort of sustained.
This is a question of how much does social interaction support your well-being. For me, it's a lot, but for a future society,
Well,
who knows?
I don't think that's what Chad's saying, though.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Right? Tell me if I'm wrong, Chad. I think what you're trying to say is specifically the idea around us having to gather resources kind of built where we are. Once you take that away, the need to build up your own resources, whether it's personal,
Right.
for family, for friends, or whatever, when you
Right.
don't need to do that, what level left do you need to actually function as society? Because to Chad's point, society is built for us to continue to interact, to trade resources in order to survive. At its fundamental core, right?
Correct. Yes.
So if you take that need away, what's left? And I think that's interesting, and I'm gonna think about that all week now.
Yeah, but I
you
almost feel like,
motherfucker.
yeah, right, no doubt. But I almost feel like Chad was saying that in the sense that like, oh, we can fulfill our basic needs. Well, is human interaction not also a basic need for people like us? I think for people like us it is because we're used to socializing. Like I can't just sit in a room by myself my whole life. Okay, my food is supplied, my shelter's supplied, I 3D print whatever the hell I want. That's fine. But if I'm not interacting, if I'm not having
Do you know what AI
a
is,
relationship
though?
with a woman or friendships with whoever, like
Mm-hmm.
it's something as simple as sexual pleasure. Like I hate to be like, but it's true. Like, how is AI gonna satisfy you sexually? Go ahead, Chad. Go ahead.
Well, you misunderstand the level of... Okay, so I guess a lot of what I'm saying here is based in this idea of VR, but you... Again, when you're
Sure.
talking about AI,
whole road,
there's a whole... I mean, we're talking about something that is capable of solving all of our problems in a matter of whatever. Like, let's say a year, just to put a stamp
Yeah,
on
but
it.
solving problems creates new problems. Just
Right,
saying.
but you misunderstand how smart.
Sure.
Like when an AI is truly, when we're talking about AI in the sense of something that can teach itself, it's over. It's over.
Okay, that's fair.
So there's a robot. Sorry, not a robot. It was an AI machine called, I think it was called Deep Blue, and they gave it the rules of chess, how it's played, and like just the paradigms of the board, right? What each piece can do, what the limits are, blah blah blah. Within 6 hours, it had solved, or it had figured out all of the information that humans have figured out about chess within 6 hours. It had caught up and surpassed us in 6 hours. Now this is AI today, or not even. This is AI like years ago, 4 years ago maybe.
Can I interject real quick though?
Sure.
Okay, you are correct. When it comes to stuff like that, you are 100% correct. When it comes to stuff like procreating and human sexuality,
Yeah, I
you
was
are
getting there.
incorrect. Okay,
I was
go
getting
ahead.
there. So I figured out everything that humans have ever figured out about chess in 6 hours. That was a computer 4 years ago. When you're talking about AI, let's say a self-aware thing that can teach itself with like basically unlimited hardware, it's going to be able to
Processing power.
processing power. That's what I was trying to think of. It's going to solve everything. So imagine like a VR world. Everyone lives in a VR world now where the sensory experience you are having is indiscernible between real life. Everything about it. Now, you might get to
How far away are we from that, though?
again, if we hit AI as I'm talking about it, we're not that far away from. Well, I guess it's really tough to
extremely far away
define.
from that.
From AI, not from AI.
From AI being able to solve everything, including being able to bear a womb. Come on now, stop playing.
When
Like be
I
pregnant,
honestly,
when you're talking,
procreate.
Cyril,
Like these are. Go ahead.
Cyril,
Yeah.
when AI gets to the point of what Chad is talking about, it's only a matter of resources at that point.
But you're speculating.
Like, do I have the resources to do it?
speculating.
That's
It's not, though.
speculation, man.
again, 6 hours to figure out what it
It's
took
not
humans
speculation that we'd
hundreds
be
of
able to
years
get there
about to
with
get
AI. It's speculating that we'd
Right.
be able to get there without fucking burning ourselves to the ground. Go ahead.
Okay, but take that out of the equation, right? Let's just talk
Fine.
about specifically
Then you're
the
right.
development of AI and where it would get. I
30
think
years.
Chad's point is that the problems that it would solve would take it such a short amount of time that although there are new problems, it would continue to solve those problems. Now,
Fine. I agree.
to rebut a little bit of what Chad is talking about, I also think that when you incorporate AI into and this to me is just a kind of a natural transition for humans, is you incorporate that into spanning our galaxy or beyond there. I think that's what we end up using AI and using all these resources for, is we just end up trying to
But if-
colonize.
But
Go ahead.
it
And that's fine, but if I may say, the amount of problems, the amount of progress that humanity and life, just in general, has made on this earth, has always presented new problems in front of us. Okay. We can't fathom. Literally, we need AI just to be able to explore past our earth. We need AI, we need technology, we need all these things just to get out there.
so this
And then on
is
top of that, hang on, on
Yep.
top of that, as we create a more complex, more intricate society that becomes more knowledgeable about past our Earth, and we get to that technology that allows us to do that, the problems will be more and higher and more complicated. These aren't like, we are talking about AI, I feel like, and tell me if I'm wrong, Chad, I feel like you're talking about AI solving humanity problems here on Earth, like in a snap of a finger. Fine. But think about exploring the galaxy, exploring the universe. Problems compound on problems. That's what history has shown us, has taught us.
Yep.
We have progressed extremely far, and we have even bigger problems to face. I don't have any reason to suspect that will change. Go ahead.
Yeah. So here's the thing about space. Here's the problem, right? It's too fucking big. If we want to travel to the nearest star at the speed of light, which is impossible, mind you, it would take 4 years for the nearest star. This is why I think everyone's going to retreat into VR, right? Because the universe, as many potential possibilities it offers, it is almost impassable. It takes way too fucking long to travel. People don't have the patience for that. You're talking about thousands of generations. That is, of course, unless VR can figure out how to bend space and time, we're fucked. This is also my position on Fermi's paradox. The reason we don't see aliens is because when they reach that sufficiently advanced state, everyone retreats into VR because you can do anything.
Way easier.
You can
right?
create your own
No,
universe. You don't have to explore the physical
I-
universe.
I've never thought of that, dude. We're getting deep.
I disagree with you. I think Fermi's paradox is because we're the first species that has been blown out of our fucking planet and completely annihilated.
That's insane.
Even get to this close point.
You know how
How's
big
that
the
insane?
universe is, though, right?
Yeah, but we can't
You understand?
know, Chad. You can't say that's insane.
It is statistically improbable that we're the first. And you can say that with great assurance, depending on how vast the universe is. That we would be the first, it's nearly impossible when you consider the scale of the
But you just said
universe.
it's impossible to travel at the speed of light.
It is.
So then, going off what Caleb's saying, going off what Caleb is saying, that why couldn't we be the first person? Well, no, I guess I'm proving it to myself.
I think
Never mind.
honestly, Chad's right. Statistically, that's just highly unlikely. although my feeling, Chad, and you tell me if I'm wrong, and this is my feeling based on our current society today, is that you do have these breakaway pockets of people that enjoy doing something different than other people, right? And I think what you end up having is you're going to have a subsect of a group of humans that decide, no, VR is for the fucking birds, that's lame. I would rather use AI to figure out how I can make myself live to be 1,000 years old and travel as much of the galaxy as I possibly can. Like, there's going to be, and to me, that's my argument against what you're saying. And that's just a personal, just from my viewpoint, because I see so many people that are super into video games, and there's not as many people, but a ton of people that are like, nah, fuck that. I'd rather go walk around the woods forever. You know what I mean? It's this very small group of people, but I think it's just enough to be able to go and explore right the galaxy and
even if
take on those type of.
Even if the majority of your society wants to live in a virtual reality, there are still some that are willing to push the bounds. I'm with him on that.
I'm with him up until the point where VR becomes imperceptible from reality. Then there really is... I mean, what is the point of taking thousands of generations to span the universe when you can just physically do it in an instant, you yourself, not having to live your entire life on a ship? Right? You see what I'm saying? Like,
I tell you why.
If it's completely imperceptible...
I just think you have to look at human history. Like, there's always a human being willing to step out on the edge. Christopher Columbus didn't have to go fucking sail across the ocean.
You can step out on the edge.
But all you need is one. Go ahead, Caleb.
I disagree. I think my thought process comes from something that I like to think that I am naturally, and that is being a contrarian. I like to think that because you're telling me I can't, I'm going to go try and do it anyway. Now, my likelihood of success may be so small, Chad, that other alien species that this actually happened to, where you're saying 99.9% of them are in VR, whereas that 0.1% tried to explore the galaxy and got fucking killed, is also just as likely as any scenario we could. Well, I shouldn't say it's just as likely, but in my brain, the way I interpret, space and the universe and everything that's happening is just as likely as everyone being in VR or having a small breakaway civilization that decides to fucking explore the galaxy or the cosmos. My point, though, to come full circle, is that in order to achieve a goal on such a scale, we do have to find a way as humans to be a bit more collectivist. And I think that requires a separate entity in some way, shape, or form that I don't want to say is incorruptible, but is much more neutral in its process.
That's what it has to be, though, right? Because this is why this social credit system, everybody grinds their teeth at it, because on paper, it might actually be a good idea. But when you bring in corrupt politicians who are in charge of levying what the morals of society should be, that's a problem. You can't trust people to do that.
I'd be more...
Not in a totalitarian way, I should say. Totalitarian way.
I'd be more trusting of a system if it could somehow be guaranteed to me that an independent computer is making decisions. And we literally... And yes, you heard that right. Here in 2019, we're literally at the point in society and development where I would trust a promised no shit... Not even promised, because that means a human promised it. But like, if I could get a no shit, this computer is going to crunch numbers and spit out data to make us better, I'd be like, okay. But there's always someone pulling the levers. We still have someone pulling the levers.
Right.
And that makes it
more
dangerous.
You know what's interesting too? Is that if you were just punching numbers, like if you were telling a computer, all right, make sure humans prosper, and they were just to crunch numbers and pull out the data, they would probably immediately wipe out 90% of humans, right? Because there's too many of us, we're overpopulated, we're burdened. Clean out 90% of them, keep your 10, like, let's say top 10th percentile. Boom, that's who we're keeping. You know what I mean? We're going to have to, as unfortunate as it is, even with this AI, whatever, this machine that's uncorruptible, you still have to set the parameters for what a good human society is, for it to understand where to tweak and balance. So that kind of makes the problem a bit more complicated.
Hold on.
And then it turns on us. Sorry, go ahead.
Your point, Chad, in 6 hours, AI 4 years ago could figure out all the things that we ever figure out about chess. What do you
Yeah.
think it could do in 1 year with all the rules and all the data and all the history we could give it as far as human society?
So the thing with chess, we had to set what the goal of the game was. So it's kind of gets weird when you try to transfer that onto humans. What is the goal of humans, right? Is it to be happy? Is it to be fulfilled? Is it to just prosper? Is it just to, it's easy with chess because it's easy to it's black and white what the conditions are to win are.
Right.
It's not that easy when it comes to just humanity.
Right. But again, for me at least,
it's self-learning.
We're looking very nearsightedly.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I mean,
if we look, Chad, to
President
your
of the
point, Chad, 30 years from now, what is AI going to look like? We might be on the cusp of being able to do things that we could barely even imagine right now. This being one of those things, and that is to discern what the entire goal of the human race is, and to think about for literally thousands of years, humans have tried to explain the meaning of life, have tried to explain what it takes to lead a good life, what it takes to be a good human, whether it's through religion, whether it's through, living through the land. I mean, there's a gajillion theories on how to live life, and it's all going to boil down to one AI machine being like, hey, you dumb fucks, this is what it is.
Yep. So,
I don't know. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that there's an answer. That's my problem.
this has been a great discussion.
That's because you're a human.
I think it's a bit more
I'm gonna go
complicated
ahead
than that,
and-
but yeah, go ahead, Cyril. Go ahead.
Try to tie a bow around this. Wrap this up.
Sure.
No,
I
you
wanna
can't
call
tie a
out-
bow on anything we just did.
I'm gonna call out. No, that was a wonderful discussion. But I want to call out Chad real quick.
Yeah, call me out.
Oh,
The blast. Is
to
coming.
lunch?
So,
The what?
yeah. Do you want to go to lunch? No problem. Anyways,
He said the blast is coming.
so
Oh, blast me.
Chad said that sounds weird. Chad says that in 30 years from now, he said it like this was like 15 minutes ago. He said in 30 years from now, we can feasibly. Go ahead.
Yep.
Go ahead and expand on that.
I'll be very interested to see where AI is in 30 years.
Sure. I feel like if I run the tape back, and I could be wrong, you specifically mentioned things that might be a thing in 30 years, and I wrote down when you said that.
Yeah.
Chad's like a magazine from the 1970s that like posted what they thought the world would be like in 2000.
Yeah.
Have you seen that shit? Where it's like flying cars and people like teleporting and stuff.
I have seen
I
that.
just wanna-
Actually, it's funny
I
because
want to put Chad on a quick blast. That's all. Go ahead.
no, that's fine. I'll stand by 30 years, even if it's not okay. I know we described what we
So it's
described.
apples to oranges. In your defense, really quickly, it's apples to oranges because 70 to 2000 is gonna be different than 2020 to 2050. But still, go ahead.
Yeah, well, that was part of my point was you underestimate
Right.
the exponential rate of computers, but
I do.
we were kind of discussing something at that time that was like perfect, like self-learning machine that can solve. I don't think it's going to be that, but I think we're going to see some very big things within 30 years concerning AI. Very big, like society-altering type things. I would 100% put my money behind that.
Look, but mom and dad have seen that too. It's called the internet.
Yeah,
there's
but
no
it's-
question the internet is society.
Sure.
altering. Or
Yes.
has been, is being. So, yeah, of course.
Right.
All the things.
All the things.
Not articulate, but you know what I'm saying. All the things.
Yeah.
I just
think-
ultimately, I think what's interesting to me is that the whole conversation, to me, it's interesting to think of and to see something progressing in front of our eyes, and the natural reaction is always, that's bad. That's bad.
Well, change is always bad.
And I'm not trying to I'm not trying to necessarily make a case for specifically what China is doing. I want to make that clear.
Right.
But what I am saying is that I think that we're actually seeing the first step towards what society may look like 1,000 years from now.
will be
But instead of a
less-
social credit system monitored by humans, it's just completely.
I still grind at this
completely-
idea of a social credit system.
Dude, so do I. And at our
But that's
most,
because-
in our at our most in our siblings, the four of us,
even
at our
with
most, we're separated by 6 years, but it's a little less than that between you and Chad. So we're all pretty much in the same generation, I'd say.
we
Right.
are definitely
We like. Do you
I
guys
think
ever
by
think about like
definition
if you're
we're-
able to like? We can still opt out of social media. Maybe not so for our kids. Who knows, dog?
That's
Who knows? You know
yeah,
what I'm
that's
saying?
something I've thought a lot about because
We can still opt out in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like, this is a trial period, and yeah, who knows where it'll go? I don't know.
oh boy,
What if
that's
you
a
think-
whole
What if the
nother
government just automatically
conversation.
makes you just like a social media profile,
Right,
and, like,
right,
Whether you want to delete it or not, it's just there. You know,
right.
it just tracks you. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
That's
You
a
go live in the
that's
woods
a
at that point. Fuck
oh,
everybody.
boy.
Fuck them all. Okay, we're done.
Oh my god. Do you want to end on that then?
Oh sure. I
All right.
see.
This has been the Three Bros Podcast saying fuck them all. Thanks for listening.
You know what I'm saying though? Real talk. You might want to like be like, listen, let me just go.